My name is Edward Donald. I work for UKTI as an e-commerce specialist, and my colleague Neil Tunbridge is e-marketplace specialist. And today what we're going to walk through is the e-exporting program overview, and this summarizes UKTI's offer to UK retailers, and for context gives a global perspective on some key trends that we've been able to analyze, and also frames some of the commercial results that we've achieved to date, and also we will talk about some of the opportunities that UKTI has negotiated specifically with e-marketplaces around the globe. So just to kick off, some of the key trends that are affecting consumer behavior around the globe, and I think probably the key element to stress in this slide is if you're looking at export markets, traditionally you might have looked at things like population size, concentration in urban environments, maybe GDP, gross domestic product. And what we suggest now is that you look at things like internet coverage, usage of smartphones, and how connected consumers are in those marketplaces.
This slide and the next few slides are really about the what and the how and the why of this program, but also explaining now that it's a very different contextualized market in which we're trying to help organizations sell. So hence, as Ed was saying, it's about looking at smartphone penetration, it's about looking at the connected consumer and really understanding how people are engaging with brands, importantly overseas and on the marketplaces that we'll talk about in a bit.
What we are seeing increasingly from areas like China and the wider Asian region is that purchases are moving to in the region of 50% across mobile device, and notably using e-marketplaces. So the key message here is if e-marketplaces are not part of your consideration for exporting, they need to become that. It's the fastest moving channel, and it's the one that gives you national reach in all the geographies that you may be considering.
It's a different route to market, and it's a much lower cost market entry strategy by delivering your products into an e-marketplace. The traditional route to market would have been quite a long, engaged, drawn-out process where you'll be looking at either distribution partners or franchise partners. Traditionally, offline retail models also then involve the need to acquire retail stores. Those retail stores are expensive to fit out. You need to put a lot of stock in them. The rents on those retail stores are often very expensive as well. What this really does then is turn the traditional market entry strategy on its head. You have a low-cost entry model. You've got a marketplace that's done all the heavy lifting for you already. They have a significant number of connected consumers using their platform already, and you also have more traditionally a significant grouping of peer group brands through which you can then access these customers as well.
What this program delivers is a set of products which are designed to help companies optimize their approach, and there are three key strands to this. The one is we're talking about a world now where there's fundamentally far more choice, A, about how you go into a market, B, how you go about accessing a particular consumer group, and thirdly, how you monitor the return on investment of your activity. So under the mission statement of accelerating global growth through online channels, what this program is about is lifting the UK retail industry into the e-commerce space.
What we're trying to help industry understand here is that a new market entry strategy now really leans on communication and data. And the fact that we have ability to access all of the data around these 400 or circa 400 marketplaces around the world gives us the innate ability to have a very data-led approach to helping organizations access and enter new markets.
So the second point then is around what we call the e-expertise bank. And it's really built off the same fundamental thought that if on the one hand UKTI is giving companies tremendous visibility of the opportunity that's available across the globe or in a given region or in a given geography, it therefore stands to reason that UKTI needs to also show the companies the different steps they need to adopt if they're moving into cross-border trade using e-commerce as opposed to using a traditional distributor or agent or franchise-led model.
Just to summarize that, it's an information-led expertise bank. So at any point in the stage, irrespective of whatever geography, or market that you're looking to go in, there will be someone that can pinpoint the precise process that you need to take in order to alleviate whatever hurdles are in the way.
The International Trade Advisors are a service that is provided by UKTI free to British businesses to help them, A, understand how to plan a business from a domestic perspective, and secondly, put it on a secure footing, ready to take it abroad. And holding that thought, therefore, of these advisors already being out there and it being a free service, the digital advisors are a supplementary team who will come in alongside those international trade advisors specifically to talk about two things. One is migrating a business model to take into account an e-commerce channel, and secondly, how to use digital communications, so YouTube, Pinterest, Twitter, Instagram, all those channels that are available, how to use them to give global reach to the marketing activities of UK retailers.
It's also about understanding the fundamentals of how specific markets operate, so that we know in Asia and specifically in China, social commerce, so selling through social media channels is hugely important and is really driving a lot of the e-commerce sales that's happening over there. That's not so the case in Germany, that's not so the case in Brazil. So the digital advisors will offer specific expertise and knowledge to around the different markets and marketplaces that we're working with.
You've seen a lot of branding with the word great today. And what that talks to is the fact that the government has a branding campaign called Great. And Great, if you were in France or in Japan or in China, you would increasingly see activity, communications activity, which would say food is great or fashion is great. And they are UKTI and the government's communication framework to promote British companies abroad in those given categories, be they fashion, food and drink, luxury retail, motor industry, so on and so forth.
Or e-exporting.
Or e-exporting, absolutely. And they take the form not only of advertising but also weeks where UKTI takes groups of British companies into countries like Japan, China, Malaysia, Mexico, and the purpose of those weeks is to create an environment where British companies can have, for example, 20 meetings with companies, buyers, that they would otherwise take perhaps a year or 2 years to A, create, and B, attend and convert. So what they are is a means of the government accelerating the access that British companies has to buyers abroad in these markets.
Marketplaces are also vertically driven, so that they operate on single categories. They're also multi-category driven as well, and some are dealing specifically with certain types of products. So, as Ed said, it might take you a year or 2 years to get in touch with the right organisations, understand what they sell, and then ultimately meet and talk to the right person managing your specific brand or product. In this instance, we can put you directly in front in front of the 4 leading marketplace digital marketplaces in Japan, and really accelerate those conversations that you wouldn't otherwise have the ability to do so quickly.
Using the knowledge that we have from the Navigator that we have in place, what we have begun to do is initiate discussions and agreements with a number of e-marketplaces around the globe. The most public of which is Tmall in China, and we'll come on to refer to that a little bit later on. But really the key point about this is that for UKTI to offer British retailers a genuine enabling effect, what we are putting in place is terms and also offers which sometimes are non-financial but have a value-related proposition to them, whereby British retailers can be placed onto these platforms faster, along with lots of other British retail brands, so that they arrive at the biggest splash into that marketplace. So we'll just round out now talking very briefly about point number 6, which is that going back to the sort of products that the International Trade Advisor offers for free or for voucher payment, there are certain products that already exist which will fall in now under this e-exporting program, one of which is called Passport to Export. For those of you hearing this for the first time, this is a preparation product that takes a company that's been performing very well domestically in the UK and takes it through the steps to basically audit what it needs to do to begin to move overseas. And the key variation now is that where that might have been before about attending trade shows and finding a distributor, this product will now also say, how do you locate the best e-marketplaces to go on, for example. We'll talk now about really the scale and the scope of what UKTI is, and therefore what it can make available to British companies. And the key words here are the network that it offers, the breadth of what that offer is, and also the connectivity that it offers. So we'll now walk this through as a flow, but effectively it starts with the consumer here in the bottom right-hand corner. So we know, UKTI knows the e-marketplaces, and it also knows the number of consumers that are visiting those e-marketplaces every day. So UKTI can help put you into that consumer grouping.
By understanding the consumer demand on the marketplaces, the data that we're getting from the marketplaces and feeding into that Navigator model that Ed was talking about earlier on, it almost comes full circle, because we can feed that back into our network. Anyone want to have a dance? We can feed that back into our network and then understand precisely the types of brands, the price points and the peer groups of brands that the customers that are online and doing a lot of the shopping online, we can backfill the pent-up demand that's coming through these marketplaces.
If you think back to that box there that talked about the marketplace, the Navigator that UKTI has is effectively the brain that sits behind our ability to matchmake a UK retailer or a UK brand with a given marketplace. And the key thing here is that these marketplaces aren't just a sales channel, but they're fundamentally it's fundamentally about an audience aggregator. So the profile of the consumer coming through that e-marketplace is very important. The sort of trends, the behaviors that we can see from the data are very important. And once we know the profile of the consumer that the retailer or the brand wants, we can then bring as close a possible fit to the sort of e-marketplace that's most appropriate for them. From a return on investment perspective, what we have done is we've looked very carefully at who this could be appropriate to, because UKTI is for everybody, and fundamentally we believe that the availability of e-marketplaces and cross-border trade ultimately democratizes the opportunity in a far more far-reaching way than trade has perhaps been possible until maybe 20 years ago and the arrival of e-commerce. What we just wanted to try and do with this map, in a very simplified way, is just try to show for you the regions of the globe where there are some very, very, very big players, but also try to emphasize to you how, sitting in your offices in the United Kingdom, you can begin to look across that horizon and say, if my Google Analytics is showing that I've got a little bit of interest in Germany, I actually know that I could go through maybe Amazon or eBay into Germany. Equally, you could be looking at Australia because you've got some interest off your blog, and therefore you could have a legitimate reason to follow up with that interest and begin to offer a presence in via an e-marketplace in Australia. And so this slide is just a quick recap really of some of the marketplaces that we're busy talking to, and there are others who we are actively in negotiation and conversations with. But it's really about the global reach of this opportunity, and we really want to stress that, but at the same time encourage you to have the sort of discipline to say, okay, if that's all that's there, what is my web analytics saying to me? What are my blogs saying to me? Where is my audience as it stands today? And therefore, how can I optimize that existing sales potential by then using an e-marketplace to target them?
This is far from being an exhaustive list. We keep referring to over 400 marketplaces, and I think we probably have about 12 on here. But what we've tried to do, as Ed said, is just demonstrate the geographic scope of the relationships that we have either already developed with significant conversations around putting in place an MOU, or the very deep understanding we have around the financial and commercial operational an operational setup of these marketplaces.
Under the gov.uk/exporting tag, you can find information relating to this program, and I would suggest it's an ongoing destination that it would be a good idea to check regularly, because that is a cross-government URL. So in other words, anything to do with this program and associated programs will all be streamlined and streamed through that particular destination. So if later on this autumn broadband vouchers, which are being made available, are something that you want, that's the place to go and find out about them. Equally, that's the place to go and find, for example, new content or that type of thing that we're putting out. Secondly, there's the email address which comes directly into our team in London, and we will cycle through those questions and either try to answer them ourselves or find the most appropriate ways of doing so. And last but not least, please do follow, and if it's appropriate, retweet any of the activity that you see on our Twitter feed. Because whilst to date we've been in a situation pre-launch where we have been having to hold some of this information back, we now want to actively use Twitter to recruit people into the different programs, different opportunities that fit under this program.